in an exclusive conversation with Vikram Sampath, author and historian, who's known to have walked into territories which has made millions of readers open their eyes about the history of India. Not just that, he has also made the established academician also a little comfortable by his writings about Veer Savarkar. And today he's joining with the conversation with us about, he'll also be talking about his new book as well. So thank you so much to speaking to Republic. You are in Thiruvananthapuram, and this is the capital city where a left rules, a left ruled state. We are a state where recently even a criticism about Veer Savarkar has been taken off from the mainstream academic in Kannur University. So what is essentially wrong with the way we are perceiving history?
Thank you, Ashwin. And for me, it's not the state of the left or the right. I think it is the region of Sri Padmanabha Swami. And so I came to take his blessings. My new book, Bravehearts of Bharat, has among other, 15 unsung heroes and heroines of Indian history. And one important character in the book is Maharaja Martanda Varma, who became the Sri Padmanabha Dasa. So after the launch of the book here, I wanted to take the blessings of the Lord. History has become a very contested, subject and discipline, largely because ever since independence, I think the stranglehold with which ideology, particularly what is the Marxist and leftist ideology, has made history captive. There's a particular narrative of history which has been perpetuated since then. Many, people, heroes have either been vilified or forgotten. Veer Savarkar comes certainly in the former category, where unnecessarily I think he has been vilified and demonized, and lot of false propaganda against him has gone on for almost 7 decades. It's now that when people are rediscovering the truth, rediscovering facts based on documentations, based on what is there in the archives, that a lot of establishmentarians are feeling threatened. I think this issue of the Kannur University that you said, I think in a democracy, all forms, all opinions, discussions, differences of opinion need to be platformed. Whereas I think the left particularly revels in cancel culture, where anything that doesn't suit them is not even given a space on at the high table. So Savarkar has been such, he's a persona non grata in Indian history and also in the Indian public discourse. Whereas today in a university which should stand for free thought, free thinking, every stream of thought should be allowed. I mean, whether it is Savarkar or anybody else, the young students should read about them and then make up their mind as to which side of the fence they actually, tilt. Instead of that, just cancelling it, not even allowing it to come. I was told in some of the colleges and universities here, there were boards saying Savarkar and the governor are not allowed. I mean, what sort of democracy is this? Who are you to allow anything or anyone? It is everybody's, it's a free country, and the constitution gives us the right to propagate every stream of thought. There's no one who has the authority to clamp down on free speech and expression and thought, and more so in a university or an educational institution.
Coming to the discourse that you were speaking about, the polity in Kerala especially, what we have seen is that there is a high level of condemnation of Veer Savarkar as well. It comes even in the Legislative Assembly, where there is even no representation of a right wing, so to speak, in Assembly. So in such context, why are they threatened by it? Why do you think they are threatened by it?
So I think Savarkar was someone who was way ahead of his times, and someone who, of course, propagated the philosophy of Hindutva, which is in its ascent today in the country, politically and otherwise. And so a lot of things that he said and prophesied about the country, about national security, about, what direction this country needs to take, a lot of that has come true. And so if one starts actually reading Savarkar and understanding him for what he is, then a lot of established facts which have been dinned down our heads for so long, that will get upset. So I think that is one reason why there's so much of an anti-propaganda against him for so long.
Quickly, if is some nugget of Savarkar which could probably, shock our readers, or would you like to share something that would, that is lesser known about Savarkar?
I think nowadays people have a lot that is known about him. But here was a man who started India's first ever organized secret society in the revolutionary camp, which was called the Mitra Mela, which later became Abhinav Bharat. Someone who organized the first ever bonfire of foreign clothes in 1905 as a student in the Ferguson College. We normally associate bonfire of foreign clothes with Mahatma Gandhi, but here was Savarkar as a student in 1905 and also asking for complete freedom for the country. And 5 years that he was in London as a law student, the entire revolutionary movement literally shifted outside India to Europe, and that is where a lot of Bravehearts of Bharat, like Madam Bhikaji Kama, Madan Lal Dhingra, Shamji Krishna Verma, all these MPT Acharya, VVS Iyer, and all these people worked along with Savarkar there. And he was probably one of the few people who got one of the harshest punishments of 2 life transportations, 25 plus 25 years, 50 long years in that dreaded cellular jail in Kalapani in the Andamans. And later on, the kind of work that he did for caste annihilation, even that is only associated with Dr. Ambedkar. But here was the father of Hindutva, who was actually asking not for just eradication of untouchability, but actually a complete dismantling of all, caste differences, looking for intercaste marriage, intercaste dining at a time when, that was not even allowed. The first intercaste dining cafe in India was started in Ratnagiri under his, leadership. And the first ever temple where in 1931 in Ratnagiri called the Patit Pavan Mandir, where people of all castes could go and pray, an Asprishya Ganpati or an untouchable Ganpati, where, the lowest person in the caste order would be the priest, and even the Brahmin had to go and take his blessings to actually worship. So all of these reforms that came up, under his leadership in Ratnagiri, very few people know about. And in fact, Dr. Ambedkar himself had very glowing things to say about Savarkar, saying you are the only person who understands how that the Varna system is at the root cause of all the jatis that come about, and its eradication is what is essential. So I think a lot of these facets of Savarkar are very, less known, and light is the best disinfectant. So I think now once you throw light on the archives, on the facts, on documented history and not propaganda and rhetoric, which is what has ruled, his life and his story, I think then the truth will come out.
Often we have seen in the political discourse where we see that his apology is taken as something, a sign of weakness, or something that he's always been labeled, especially in Kerala, as a treacherous person. How do you look at it? I know for sure that you didn't want to comment about it at an earlier time, but how would you like to speak about a context of it? Or
yeah. So these were petitions, and it's not mercy petition, but these were petitions which was a very legitimate legal recourse that a lot of political prisoners at that time, particularly those who were lodged at cellular jail, were given. So people like Sachindranath Sanyal, Ulaskar Dutt, and others, Barin Ghosh, Aurobindo Ghosh's brother, all these people wrote letters. Later on, Ram Prasad Bismil, Ashfaqullah Khan, all these people who were in the Kakori case, they also wrote letters. So it was a very normal legal recourse that all political prisoners had. And in fact, in my first volume of my book, Savarkar Echoes from a Forgotten Past, I've put all the petitions, as they are. Nowhere is it an apology. Nowhere is it, seeking for pardon or so on. But clarifying their legal, legally, where do we stand? Are we a political prisoner or are we a common convict? And in fact, one of the British, officials comes to interview Sir Reginald Craddock. And this man, in his official jottings, he says, I met Mr. Savarkar, and he expresses no remorse or regret for what he has done. And a British officer need not have put it in his official jottings about him. Then we also have, in his 1917 petition, for instance, among other things, he said, says, if my name constitutes an obstacle in the release of all the other political prisoners, you omit my name and release the others, and that will give me as much pleasure as my own release would give. So he was clearly acting as a spokesperson for all the other, young political prisoners who were lodged at cellular jail. So I think we need to see it in that context and not blow it up. And calling and people from the left and so on talking about treachery. In 1942, we know that the General Secretary of the CPI, PC Joshi, the letters between him and Sir Reginald Maxwell, who was in the Home Department of the British government, for money, in return for money to the party, a lot of secrets about the Satyagrahis of the Quit India movement or the revolutionaries and the INA, Subhash Chandra Bose, all these secrets were passed on by the CPI to the British government. And today they have the gall to call a patriot as a traitor, someone who suffered so much, who suffered the most, inhuman of tortures at cellular jail, and someone who never gave up that, flame for freedom. Even as the president of the Hindu Mahasabha, if you see the resolutions, his speeches, there is always a talk for freedom, that freedom had to come. And of course, at that time, there was no mass movements were hardly there. It was all negotiations, especially after the Round Table Conference, the Government of India Act, the forming of, governments in different provinces. The Indian group was negotiating with the British for various things, either it is dominion status or complete freedom, and you had the World War coming into. So there too, they say Savarkar, helped the British in terms of getting people for the British Indian Army, which is again it is a misnomer, because he was recruiting people to the British Army so that Indians could train themselves in warfare, and then a lot of them defected to the INA and gave a feeder circuit to the INA and Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. So obviously that is again misconstrued. On that ground, in the First World War, Mahatma Gandhi also went and recruited people to the army. So you can't call Gandhi a traitor that way. So I think a lot of propaganda, misinformation, willful, malicious misinformation is done on Savarkar, and the need is to have a very dispassionate and a fact-based analysis of the man and his legacy.
One more question about Savarkar, and then we'll move on to the new book. Indira Gandhi did recognize Savarkar, and Indira Gandhi is somebody who also established the Left Academia.
Yeah.
And still she recognized Savarkar. How? What changed after that? What changed after Indira Gandhi? Why is the Gandhi family, still, criticizing?
Yeah, I know. I constantly keep saying, when people of the family or the party keep talking against him, they need to read what Indira Gandhi had said about him when he died in 1966, that his name is a very byword for patriotism, courage and sacrifice, and that his role, he has a very unique and special role in the annals of struggle against the British. She also got a stamp issued in his honor. Just if someone said this was just a for formality, she was giving a nice message on his obituary, but she got a stamp issued. She got a film made in his honor on his life, and also gave personal money as a grant for the Savarkar Memorial in Mumbai. So she would not have done that if, she was an astute politician and a stateswoman. So she would not have done that just to mollify someone. So there was, and I think a lot of people, even in Maharashtra, particularly even from the Congress, the old Congress men, Vasant Sathe and so many others, they would always advise her. Even Sharad Pawar and others, they hold Savarkar in a lot of regard, because that is the common view in Maharashtra. It's very sad that today, at a time, when the Congress is supposedly in alliance with even the Shiv Sena faction there, who is beset with so many problems, you have the leader of the party who's going on a walkathon along the country, go to Maharashtra and actually make these comments about Savarkar, which puts his ally there in a very tight spot. Already he is in a tight spot. I think what changed was during the first NDA government under Mr. Vajpayee, where suddenly Savarkar came center stage. His portrait was there in the Central Hall of Parliament. The plaque came in his honor in Port Blair with Mr. Ram Naik putting it up there. till then, I think Hindutva or its proponents were not a direct threat to dislodging the existing government, particularly of the Congress. But after that, especially when Hindutva started getting in its ascent, I think today's political parties who are opposed to BJP or Mr. Modi think that the best way to get at him is to calumnize and to demonize Savarkar, and that is the only way you can get to the his ideological ancestor, so to say, Mr. Modi's. Like, you even had people like Mr. Kharge in parliament saying even your dogs did not, fight for freedom. So there is this sense of entitlement that we, as in the Congress party, are the inheritors of the throne of India because we are the only people who fought for freedom. I think the freedom struggle has multiple dimensions and views. It is not the prerogative of one party or one person, or worse, one family. So I think there were numerous streams that were there. There was the non-violent movement, there was also the revolutionary movement, there were underground movements all the time. So I think to appropriate everything and say we are the custodians of the freedom movement, I think is very, very ahistorical. And of course it is done with politics in mind, but in the yardstick of history and the truth of history, it does not stand.
Why do you think this kind of condemnation has not been received for people who have caused partition, the Muslim League or Jinnah? Even there's hardly any criticism about Jinnah in the Indian peninsula. Why do you think is that so tilted?
Yeah. On the other hand, they say Savarkar was the progenitor of the two-nation theory, which is such a ahistorical thing. The two-nation theory, I think, was formulated by Sir Syed Ahmad Khan way before Savarkar was even born. But that itself had its roots in the Wahhabi movement, in Syed Shah Barelvi and Dehlavi and their ideology that came down the ages, and that is never accounted for. Mainly because it's thought to be politically incorrect to pin the blame for partition on a particular community, which was done on religious lines, and that is a bitter truth everyone needs to accept. In fact, Savarkar and the Hindu Mahasabha were the only political parties of the time who till the very end opposed partition, till May 1947, when partition was almost like a done deal. In fact, even Dr. Ambedkar criticized Savarkar, saying you don't understand. On the one hand, you say that culturally there are so many differences. It's Dr. Ambedkar in his book actually prescribed a complete transfer of population between the two countries, India and Pakistan, saying Hindus and Muslims cannot live together because of the theological reasons that he thought, Ambedkar thought that Islam would not allow an Indian Muslim to integrate himself loyally to the country. That were his views. And he actually thought Savarkar was being very accommodative by saying we don't want partition and we'll all live together under a secular constitution. In fact, the Hindu Mahasabha in 1945, in the course of my research, I came across the first ever draft constitution that they made, called the Constitution of Free Hindustan State, where according to them, a Hindu Rashtra was one where the majority will not get any extra privileges for being a majority. A minority will not get any concessions because they are less in number. Everybody is equal in the eyes of the law. Everyone can do what they want. Their faith and their religion should be a private affair, and that should not interfere in the public space, or no discrimination against anyone on the basis of religion. So what more is secularism? That was secular in the true sense of the word, whereas post-independence, the version of secularism that we adopted was one which was tilted in favor of some people, but against particularly the majority community of India, which was not how at least the Hindu Mahasabha had envisaged secularism. So I think that is also something that is needed to be seen in context, and not this untruth be bandied again and again and again that he conceptualized two-nation theory. I think there's nothing more removed from the truth. Of course, in one of his speeches, he had said that there are two nations within India as long as there is a section, particularly within the Muslim community, which owes its allegiance outside India, and that had its roots right from the Khilafat movement and everything, where you were, galvanizing a community to on the basis of religion, saying someone who's sitting in Turkey, the caliph, how to make him the caliph, you participate in the freedom movement. So as long as these extraterritorial allegiances are there in India, there would be two nations. But once that is gone, there can be emotional integration possible between the two communities, was what he had thought of.
Somewhere in the history also there was this moment for even Dravidistan, and even Ambedkar to some extent did want want something like on those lines. Yet we do not see this kind of a shock factor when other figures are there. But
no, you're right, because Ambedkar, Jinnah and Periyar, they had met several times, and this demand for Dravidistan and so on, which Periyar kept pushing, was something that that is a well-known fact. In fact, Periyar, several times he made entreaties in my second volume, Savarkar, A Contested Legacy. I actually quote letters from him to Jinnah, requesting for help. And at some point, Jinnah gets fed up and says, I have my own Pakistan to take care of. I can't come and help you in your Dravidistan movement. So please leave me alone. So there was this lobbying being done for creating this separate land and so on, which nobody talks about at all. And this thing that, Savarkar did not take part in the Quit India movement and so on. There were so many others who did not take part. Dr. Ambedkar stayed away from the Quit India movement. At that time, he was in the Viceroy's Council, as a minister, so to say. And in fact, I quote him again in my book, where he says, at that juncture, when Japan was at our borders, Second World War time, to participate in a movement like this is a treacherous move against the country, and he urged all Indians who are patriotic not to participate in the Quit India movement. So many people had misgivings about how badly structured that movement was, without any plan of action, no leadership, all the Congress leaders put in jail. So it was a directionless, the manner in which it went. In fact, the Congress itself disassociated itself from Quit India movement because it turned out to be extremely violent. It was called August disturbances. So nobody would then say Ambedkar did not participate in the Quit India movement, therefore he's a traitor, and therefore he was also sitting in the British Council. He did not go to jail, he did not participate in any freedom struggle. But that albatross is always put only on Savarkar's neck, or the Hindu Mahasabha, saying, where were you during the freedom struggle, or what movement did you lodge? So that's what I mean. Just participating in the Congress-led movement becomes a yardstick for you being patriotic or you having participated in the freedom struggle. I think that is very unfair, because as I said earlier, there are multiple streams to our freedom movement, and there were different heroes and heroines who participated in that, who were not necessarily associated with the Congress. So all of them are not traitors, all of them are not anti-national in today's parlance, where if you don't belong to this group, go away to Pakistan, you are anti-national. This attitude is very similar. If you did not participate in this, you are a traitor. I think that reductionism and oversimplification is, again, it does no justice to the people or to history at large.
Moving away from Savarkar, you have been somebody who has often trying to transform a civilization which is projected as very pacifist, somebody who very defeatist civilization, to a more, to a civilization which is filled with valor. I'm sure your new book also contains a lot of these stories. Would you like to shed some light on some of these aspects? That are we a civilization which has constantly been defending itself, or very pacifist? Is it something that needs to be glorified all the time?
No, not at all. In fact, in a conversation, the genesis of this new book, Bravehearts of Bharat, came during a conversation between me and my good friend Sanjeev Sanyal, where we were discussing that in our growing up years, in our history books, all that we learnt about, battles is a long litany of wars where we as India and Indians have lost. from the battles of Panipat to Battle of Tarain, Buxar, Plassey, Anglo-Maratha, Anglo-Mysore, Anglo-Sikh wars. Every war that a child is asked to memorize are wars that we lost. Now, if we are still alive as a civilization, there must have been some wars we won also, some amount of courage that we put also. So where are those stories of all those heroes and heroines who won battles, who showed courage, and why can't we eulogize them and take inspiration from that? And that was the genesis of this book. And also Indian historiography, among its numerous lapses, it's also highly Delhi centric. Everything is a child reads about Khiljis and Tughlaqs and Lodhis and all these little dynasties which ruled for a couple of decades, and which were largely bigoted, marauders and so on, whose contribution to the civilization is next to zilch. But then large parts of India, particularly where we are now, South India or the Northeast, they hardly feature in the manner that it deserves or commensurate to its importance. The Cholas ruled for 1,000 years, the Ahoms for 600 years, the Wadiyars of Mysore for 600 years, the Travancore rulers here, who established welfare states, like Mysore and Travancore, Baroda, all these places. These are hardly a part of our, curriculum or our larger historical consciousness. So I think that also needed to be corrected. So in this book, what I've done is I've picked 15 such brave hearts, and also gender balance. Women don't get their due as much. So I've chosen 7 women and 8 men. People like Lalita Aditya Muktapida of the Karkota dynasty of Kashmir, about whom I'm sure many people don't even know. In the 7th century, he ensured that the Arabs were kept at bay, and beyond the invasion of Sindh, they could not occupy much of India. You had Rani Naiki Devi of Gujarat, of the Chalukya Solanki dynasty, who defeated Muhammad Ghori in the Battle of Kasarhada in 1178. Who's heard of her, and what she did? And Ghori was so, humiliated that he never turned towards Gujarat again, that he was actually vanquished by a woman. Then there was Rana Kumbha of Mewar, who was an unvanquished, ruler all his life. He won all battles in his life. He constructed the second longest wall after the Great Wall of China in India, the Kumbhalgarh Fort. A lot of people should go there and see, his, creation there. Rajaraja Chola and Rajendra Chola, who ensured that India's sphere of influence went beyond the subcontinent to Maldives, to Sri Lanka, to Sri Vijaya in the Malay Peninsula, and the cultural and the trade, impact that had on all those regions. Rani Abbakka from Karnataka, who defeated the Portuguese. Martandavarma from Travancore, who in the Battle of Kolachal in 1741 gave a death blow to the Dutch East India Company, so much so that the Dutch plans of colonizing India collapsed completely. Similarly, you had Kanhoji Angre of the Maratha commander-in-chief of the Maratha Navy. So after the Cholas, the next major naval power were the Marathas and Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. So his naval commander, who defeated the Dutch, the Portuguese, the British East India Company, and also the Siddhis on the western coast. Velu Nachiyar from Shivaganga, whose birth anniversary I think was just on 2 days ago, on 3rd of January, who was among the first queens in India who led a successful campaign against the English East India Company and reoccupied her kingdom. And along with the Mardu brothers, the Mardu Pandyans, Kattabomman, Veerapandian, all these people, and of course later the Parasi Raja from Kerala, all of them formed the Polygar rebellion in South India. So again, all these people, Lachit Barphukan from Assam, whose 400th birth anniversary, again, the government of India and the government of Assam thankfully celebrated. In the Battle of Saraighat, he ensured that a huge imperial army that Aurangzeb had sent under Raja Ram Singh of Jaipur was completely defeated, and Kamrup or Assam was never occupied by anybody. This Banda Singh Bahadur of Punjab, the Sikh soldier who established one of the first, Sikh states 70 years before Maharaja Ranjit Singh as well. Begum Hazrat Mahal of Awadh, who made Lucknow the last bastion of the 1857 uprising. Chand Bibi of Ahmednagar, who kept Akbar at bay. So all these people are featured in this book, including 2 civilizational warriors, Ahilyabai Holkar and Rajyashri Bhagyachandra Jai Singh of Manipur, again about whom we probably know very little of, because the Northeast, as I said, is a black hole when it comes to history. So these 15 rulers are what I cover in this book, and through that, hopefully this is the start to many more such books by other scholars and writers about unsung heroes, heroines, and tales of valor, courage, a civilizational resistance, not necessarily only military and physical, but people like Ahilyabai or Jai Singh in Manipur, who established the Vaishnava Sampradaya there, and the Krishna Bhakti, the Manipuri Ras Leela, and all of that. So to bring all these people into the national mainstream, national consciousness, that Indian history is not just Delhi, Indian history is not just memorizing the names of who succeeded whom on the throne of Delhi, the Lodhis, the Khiljis, the Tughlaqs, and the entire laundry list of all the Mughals. I think we need to move out of that, and Bharat needs to snatch back her narrative of her history from Delhi.
And the last question will be definitely about Aniram Tirunal Martanda Varma. How do you see him? Has he been able to save the demography of Kerala by large?
That's a good question. I think he came at a very difficult time when it was Waynard earlier, and then he integrated all the smaller principalities in northern Kerala and central Kerala to create the larger kingdom of Travancore. And I think people also say, and it is a true fact, that considering the strife, the treason under which he was operating, he was also quite ruthless in the manner in which he suppressed a lot of people who were opposed. He constantly had threats to his life even before he became the king. So he had to be he had to show his might to those who opposed him. But after that, once he established himself, and especially after defeating the Dutch and thereby getting a major part of the pepper trade and the spice trade, which is what I think made Travancore so wealthy, the Padmanabha Swami temple again becoming such a source of wealth and so on, that is when he also does the most unthinkable thing, which is, after so much of conquering, you surrender all of that to the Lord, to the deity, and then say that, I'm a Padmanabha Dasa and I am a trustee of the kingdom. I am not the king. You are the king as the God, as the presiding deity, and I am just your representative. And I think that was the supreme sacrifice you do after a long trail of, destruction, wars, and strife. And I think that's what has held them in good stead, the Travancore royal family. But nonetheless, his unification of all the different tribes, the demographics of the Malabar, to form this very, very effective kingdom and lay the foundations of that, which later even repelled the invasions from Mysore of Hyder Ali and Tipu Sultan in the Nedankota battle, and all these incursions that happened. I think the foundations of that were laid by Martanda Varma, and the credit needs to go to him for that.
All right. Thank you so much, Vikram Sampath, for speaking to Republic. It's been an absolute honor. Thank you so much for shedding light on the history that India needs to speak. And we look forward to seeing more books from you. We also look forward to I also look forward to read the latest book. Thank you so much for speaking to Republic.
Thank you. Always a pleasure talking to you.
That is Vikram Sampath, author and historian, speaking exclusively to Republic about the right kind of history that India needs to hear and read about. With video journalist Mani S. from Thiruvananthapuram, Ashwin Nandakumar, Republic TV.